The search at the EgyptAir crash site is joined by an Egyptian robotic submarine. The flight's black box recorders have not yet been found. And for more on this, I'm joined by John Cox, a former airline pilot and accident investigator. We've reached him in St. Petersburg, Florida. Pleasure to be speaking with you again. We are learning today this latest development that Egypt has sent submarines to recover the flight data recorders. What does that indicate to you?
Well, good afternoon, Asha. This is the next step, the next logical step in this investigative process. Clearly, there have been other submarines that will have been in the area, and the function right now is to listen very carefully and attempt to locate the acoustic pingers that are on the flight data recorder. They have a limited life of about 30 days from the accident, so they want to get the submarines that can hear these pingers. It's actually a clicking noise, and if they can locate this, then it will help them locate the recorders, which will be a vital part of understanding what happened to this in this tragedy.
And given how vast this search area is and how deep the sea is, how hard will that be?
Oh, it's going to be challenging, but it's not going to be nearly as challenging as some of the other areas in which successful searches have been conducted. As an example, the Air France 447. As I understand it, this part of the Mediterranean is relatively flat. It is sloping, and in places it's quite deep, but it is not mountainous. That's the good news. The bad news is it's like a silt quality of the sea floor, and so that some of the wreckage is going to sink into that silt, which means there'll be less for the side scan sonar to pick up. So there's kind of a good news, bad news thing here, but I'm confident in the quality and the expertise of the search teams, and I'm very confident that we will find this wreckage.
It's essential to find the flight recorders. Can you just remind us why it's so important?
Well, there are two recorders. There are first a cockpit voice recorder, and it records all the radio exchanges between the pilots and the air traffic control. In addition, there's a flight data recorder that it has thousands of parameters in the systems of the airplane that it records, so it'll tell you the health of the airplane as well as what the airplane's actually doing. Is the autopilot engaged? What heading? What altitude? What's the rate of fuel burn, and so forth. In addition, the cockpit voice recorder also records the conversations within the flight deck between the two pilots. So if there's a problem, it will record not only the warnings, the oral warnings that the pilots would hear, but also how they're dealing with that problem.
Now, yesterday, the latest detail there was that sensors on the plane detected smoke. What does that tell you?
Well, there are 7 faults that were broadcast down through a data communication system known as ACARS. And I've looked at it in some detail, and to think that it's the sensors themselves that are sending the warning, it would be very unusual to have 3 windows, for example, overheat at one time. But they all tie into a central window heat controlling unit that is in the avionics bay. The same is also true for the lavatory smoke. So it is possible that the sensors that are saying that the windows overheated or that there was lavatory smoke, it might in fact be that the computers within the avionics bay are experiencing some problem, and that's where the warnings are originating. Clearly, it's something the investigators are going to look at, trying to find the common areas that would cause these 7 faults to be transmitted down in 3 minutes.
As we continue to get piecemeal details of this investigation, anything stand out for you?
I've been an accident investigator for 30 years, and I learned a long time ago is to gather the data, keep your mind completely open, and then let the evidence lead you where it leads you. And that's where we are with this. We have incomplete evidence, we have incomplete data, so everything remains on the table. It could be a maintenance issue, it could be a structural issue, it could be a pilot issue, it could be an explosive device. All of those and more are clearly on the table, and bit by bit, as we get more evidence, it will become much clearer as to what happened on this tragic flight.
Appreciate your perspective. Thank you, John.
My pleasure.
John Cox is a former airline pilot and accident investigator. He joined us from St. Petersburg, Florida.